think we're about to begin. Okay. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Okay. Hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parshat Vayeishev 5785. Jam-packed Parsha. Very exciting story begins in this Parsha with Yosef and his brothers and all of that. And we've spoken about it obviously in previous years. Hopefully we'll get some questions answered regarding some of the lessons and some of the details of the Parsha as we continue. So with no further ado, let's get right into the source sheet sent out via email earlier today. If you did not receive it, let me know, because you should have. Unless you shouldn't have, and then maybe you should in the future. Who knows? Either way, let's begin at the beginning. We have Yaakov, and he attempts to settle in the land. That's where the name Vayeishev comes from. There's discussion amongst the Chazal and the Rishonim whether this was the right thing to do. Achronim as well, I should add. We've spoken about that in the past, whether it's okay to settle down at some point, to retire. Somebody like Yaakov should never really feel like their job is done. There's always more to do, and indeed there was, for him especially, with the loss of Yosef later on in the Parsha. Not so much later. So first things first, Yaakov is certainly displayed in Hashem's Torah as somebody who loves his children, but seems to love one particular child more than the rest. Now, of course, the way the Chazal and others seem to say is that he gave too much favoritism to Yosef, and that's what led to many of the problems in the story. One of the famous examples of the favoritism that he showed, it says, "Yisrael ahav et Yosef mikol banav." Yisrael loved Yosef from all his sons. Ki ben zukunim hu lo. He was for him a son of old age, I guess is how you would translate it. We've spoken in the past that perhaps that doesn't mean that he was the youngest, because indeed he was not. He was only, by the way, like a year younger than Zvulun, and quite a bit older than Binyamin. So Binyamin would be the Ben Zukunim. And later on, by the way, in next week's Parsha, not next week's, not in Miketz, but in the beginning of Vayigash, Binyamin is actually called Yeled Zukunim. So he is the child of, he's chronologically the child of his older age. Ben Zukunim seems to mean something else, according to many of them in Mefarshim we've quoted in the past. Perhaps he was sort of he accompanied his father places. He helped him out. He was basically his right-hand man, as it were. Again, Asalo, and he made for him Ketonat Pasim. He made for him this special garment, checkered garment, beautiful garment, whatever it is, coat of many colors, if you believe the Broadway version. Either way, Yosef seems to have something that the other brothers don't have. They become jealous of him, and the whole story sort of progresses or digresses from there. Either way, why is it? Yaakov is not a dumb man. Why would he do that? Why would he create this kind of situation? Especially he sowed, he bought, he somehow made this special, or acquired this special garment that he gave to Yosef. Why would he do that? So maybe there's another reason he would do that. And the Haktava HaKabbalah, I thought we'd start with this today, quotes from, it says from the Gemara in Bava Kama, but I'm pretty sure it's in the Masechta that was Messiah today in Daf Yomi, Bava Batra. So the Ketava Kabbalah says, why did he give him Iktonet Pasim? Le'od shehu haya hamanig bebayed ubesadeh. He, in other words, Yosef was the one in charge. He was placed as this really supervisor over the house and the field. Ki inyan v'hilbashtav k'tonatecha. Kamram Baba Kama, like I said, I think it's Baba Batra, but maybe it says in Baba Kama as well. I don't know. Begadol achi ki heichi dilish tamaun, etc. So this quote was supposed to show that Yosef had this job, this representative responsibility that he had for his father, this Ben Zekunim job. So Ben Zekunim isn't a chronological thing. It's a responsibility. It's a job. He is, like I said before, the right-hand man, the second in command for his father. Why he picked him, why the brothers are jealous, all worthy discussions. But it's a completely different thing. When you think about how you learned this parsha as a child, and you think, oh, these brothers are jealous, that's normal, I get that. Now we're not talking about jealous like he has more toys than I do, he has the better room in the house or something like that, or he has more room in the house, whatever the case may be. The situation here is that they're jealous of his position. They're jealous of the job he's doing. They want that. And that's why Yaakov gives him this coat, because his job is to represent the family. And this, as Siftei Chaim tell us on the Gemara over and over again in the Gemaras about inheritance, about Baba Batra, you have this idea that the older son gets Pishnayim, gets a double inheritance. That double inheritance doesn't indicate in any way that he's the favorite. What does it indicate? It indicates that the father understands that he, upon his own passing, that older child will have the onus of the responsibility of taking care of the rest of the family. If he's taking care of the rest of the family, like Yosef was supposed to eventually take care of the rest of the family, which, by the way, he later on does, right, in Mitzrayim. But up until this point, Yosef has been trained by Yaakov to take over, to be the representative of the family. In which case he needs, according to the Gemara there in Bava Batra, he needs better clothing. He needs a distinguished clothing because he's supposed to look better, because he's going to go out and work in support of the rest of the family, and that's a big responsibility, and he needs to look his best. So that's a completely different perspective of this parsha. Yosef is being, like I said, trained to be the head of the household, the representative of the household, and the supporter of the household, as he, by the way, like I said, eventually will be. So in this training, part of it is for him to look a little bit different. It's worth noting, the Haktav HaKabbalah does not point this out, but it's I don't. He's not really focusing on this, but it's worth pointing out that later on, when Yosef is made the viceroy of Egypt, he also gets special clothing. Right? He gets he's avrech, etc. The whole shebang. We'll get to that, God willing, when we get to that. But meanwhile, it's worth at least our attention that this is not a crazy idea that the person in charge has to look a certain part. The general has to have a certain uniform, right? So that's what's going on here, and that's the Ketonat Pasim that is mentioned over and over again in the beginning of the parsha. All right. The brothers get jealous. He tells them a bunch of dreams that they don't like, and he tells them another dream that he doesn't like, and then the brothers go pasturing, and then the father sends Yosef to go to them, and he at that point they either sell him or he gets kidnapped, and whoever kidnaps him sells him. Whatever the case, we've talked about that last year. But why is it that the verse says very specifically what a very strange word? It's not that the word is strange, just to point out, it's that there are dots over the letter et in the verse, chapter 37, verse 12. V'yelchu echav lirot et tzon avihem b'Shechem. So the word et has two dots over it. And Rashi says that the point is Nakud al et, the dots on top of the word et, Shelo ahalchu elilirot et atzman. They really went for their own purpose. In other words, as is common in interpretation in parshanut, when there are dots on top of a letter, either on top of letters in a word, either we don't read that letter at all, or we're stressing that word. Either way, the tone of Ehem, that the fact that they were going to watch the sheep of their father in Shechem, that's what they were doing there, that seems to be somehow mellowed, sort of tuned down or tuned out, really, by this word et, which has these two dots over it. As if they didn't really go for their father's purpose. They went out for their own purpose. That's what Rashi seems to be saying. But there might be more to this. Says Rav Chaim Kanievsky in Talmud Dekra, which I guess I didn't fully quote here. Give me a second. Let's see if I can fix that quickly. You get to see the work in progress here. And see if that works. Baruch Hashem. All right. Okay. Okay. V'yelchu echav lirot etzon avihem b'Shechem. Perish Rashi nikud al eight. Melamed shelo halchu ela lirot et atzman. They really went for their own purposes. Nira, he says Rav Chaim, Nira da Torah hodia zot la'ashmiya she'ilu hayu cholchim rak ledavar mitzvah lo yachol lavo lidei devarim ki'ilu. They wouldn't have been able to get into the level of sin if they would have actually gone for the purpose of doing a mitzvah. If they would have gone for the purpose that they ostensibly seem to have been going for, to watch their father's sheep, it would be impossible for them to then get mixed up with an avera, with the sin of then selling or trying to kill Yosef. The Gemara in Sota 21a tells us that when somebody's doing a mitzvah, that mitzvah has the power to protect that person from any kind of sin. So here they are, they're doing a mitzvah, they're taking care of the father's sheep. How could this happen? Says Rashi, they weren't doing that. That's why there are dots over the letters of the word et, to point out that they were not actually doing it for the mitzvah. To do a mitzvah and to be protected by the mitzvah, you need to have intent that you're doing something for the mitzvah. Here they're doing it la'atzman, for themselves. And once they're doing it for themselves, that's when it's possible for bad things to happen. They are no longer protected in the merit of the mitzvah. All right, so that's a little detail, and again, obviously, this goes. This is much deeper than we're letting it out to be. We've spoken about in previous years and four classes before this that what the brothers did may or may not have been an avera to begin with. They might have been doing a mitzvah. 1 second. All right, good. So, indeed, it's not such a simple thing to say that they fell into sin, etc. We're talking about on that level, and if we're going to talk about that they did do the wrong thing, and as many commentaries say they did, this is an explanation for how that could have happened, so we'll go with Rashi and Rav Chaim on that to better understand the brothers. Hey, then the brothers either sell Yosef, try to kill him, and he's kidnapped and sold. Either way, they lose Yosef, but they take from him the ketonat hapasim that we talked about before, that special robe or whatever, the decorative robe. And an interesting thing happens with it. It's not quite clear. 1 second. So no, okay, and how they get the Ketunat Pasim to their father is an interesting matter worth discussion, and the Ramban will help us with that. The the fact is the verse seems to be clear, and then it turns out not to be. Now let's see what it says. Again, this is chapter 37, verse 32. And it says there, "V'yishalchu et ketunat hapasim." They sent, like shalach, like mishloach manot. They sent this ketunat hapasim. V'aviu et el avihem, and it was brought to their father. V'yomru zot matzanu. They said, "We found this." Who said? V'yomru. They said. So the people who found it, people who delivered it. What's happening? Hakernak haketonat bincha hi im lo. Then decide, investigate whether it's whether this ketonat pasim is this coat is your son's or not. All right. So already, just in the translation, it doesn't flow well, because we're not really sure who's talking, who's sending, what's happening here. Are they just are the messengers quoting the brothers? That's not what it says. Is that a problem? So the Ramban has, Baruch Hashem, some explanation for all this. First of all, he says bitzivui. V'yishalchu el ketunat hapasim eviu el avihem bitzivui. In other words, by messenger. They sent it through somebody. Or v'yaviu hashluchim hamivin, or could be that they brought it, means the messengers who brought it, not the brothers, right? Ki shalchu otab odam bedotan. Because the brothers sent this while they were still not at home, right? They don't want maybe they don't want their father to read their foreheads or whatever. Right? He uses Kabbalistic powers to find out the truth, so they sent it through these messengers who may or may not know better. V'amru zot matzanu hakerna. And the messenger said, again quoting the brothers, "We found this." I'm sorry. We found this, and so we don't know we don't know whose it is. Is it your son's or not? So there's a possible other explanation. Oh, or he's going to say this several times in this conversation. So we've already got either the brothers brought it through a messenger, or they brought it again. The messengers brought it, and not any kind of brothers. Right? The brothers were the messengers said from their own self that they found it, or sheshalachuha el Chevron leveid ha'echad mehen. The brothers brought it through messengers to Chevron, which is where Yaakov was at the time. But they brought it to one of their houses. And then they came back so they sent it to their own house in Hebron, where their father lives as well. Then they went. Then I don't know. The Amazon delivered it to one of those. They FedExed it, right? And then they themselves traveled back to Hebron, and when they got to Hebron, they took it out from the package and showed it to their father. So all of this is done to sort of like separate themselves from the facts of the case, right? So somebody who feels especially guilty about doing something, what they'll do is they'll put up as many, buffers between themselves and the actual facts of the case, so that to sort of separate themselves from it, and that way not be a guilty party. Right? They're putting up a defense basically for themselves. Ki im shitku haya choshed otam limor atem haragtem oto. If they would have stayed quiet, if they wouldn't have said anything, if they wouldn't have brought, they just, come to their father's house, on a Shabbat meal, whistling as if nothing's different. So then he's gonna say, you killed him. Harak demoto, where's Yosef? I sent him to come get you, and then he disappears. What's going on? Kiyada kinatam bo, because he knew that they had kina for him. He knew that they were jealous of him. He perhaps, as we've said in previous classes, we've pointed out, perhaps he actually even wanted that, and to fulfill the history that was supposed to happen. So now let's have another interpretation. V'yesh mefarshim, and there are other commentaries who say. By the way, this is similar to the commentary of the Radak. So v'yishalchu shitaku ba hashelach lekra limkomot rabim b'dmut shnei achayot. We've been saying shalchu means send, but shalach can also come from the word shelach, which is a sword. In other words, they cut it up. They cut up the tunic in a bunch of ways. Now let's try to fit that back into the text, just real quick, right? V'yishalchu et ktonat hapasim. They sliced up the coat, right? The coat of many colors, or whatever. And then they showed it to their father. So there's no messengers involved. It's just them bringing a sliced up coat to their father, which definitely makes the verse a lot easier on the eyes. Sorry, I went too far there. Right, there we go. Like two animals would do, like the teeth are two shine chayot, like the teeth of an animal. Right, would slice up a coat in such a way, and meloshon bishelach yavodu, as it says in the book of Eov. Right, they will be sliced up. They will be sliced up to death. Basically, they will be destroyed by slicing. V'tam hapasim. The reason that the verse is called, the verse calls this coat a ktunat pasim. By the way, Ramban translates pasim as checkered. So the reason that the reason for this is ki shalchu ota shikerena hapasim asher asa lo. They wanted him to identify what the checkers of this coat. There might be other coats in the world. How do you know? You go if you walk into a store nowadays, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you walk into a store nowadays, you'll see all kinds of ugly sweaters. How do you know? They're all distinct. Some have blue, green and red. Some of them have red and green. Whatever it is. And some of them have different characters on them randomly. However it's done, makes it distinguishable. Makes it, I know that one because I've seen that one before. So that's what they wanted him to do. They wanted him to point out and recognize this coat as the one that he had given his son. And of course, maybe not so of course, but chapter 37, verses 36 to 35 tell us the continuation of the story. Indeed, V'yakira, he recognized it. V'yomer k'tonat b'ni chaya ra achal tachu tarof toraf Yosef. It's my son's coat. A terrible, evil, strong animal must have killed him. Yosef was taken away by an animal. Was killed by, it was basically cut up to death by an animal. That's his conclusion. Vikra Yaakov simlotav. Yaakov rips his clothing as a sign of mourning. Vayasim sak b'matnav, and he puts on sackcloth. He wore a very uncomfortable sack, like what a bag is made out of, right? He puts that v'tabel al beno yamim rabim, and he mourns for his son many days. V'yakumu kol banav v'chol benotav l'nachamo. Many of his sons and daughters, perhaps daughters-in-law, tried to comfort him. V'yimayin lehidnachem v'yomer ki ered al bini avel she'ola v'yevk oto aviv. Nobody could comfort him. He even says so explicitly. Nobody can comfort me. I will go to basically to Sheol, another word for Gehenna. I'm gonna go there, mourning my son. I will to the very last day of my life. I'll be mourning the loss of my son. Now, I'm going to try to say this sensitively. I am certain that losing a child is very, very painful. It's unbelievably painful. However, Yaakov's response here seems very inconsistent with the rest of his behavior, and especially in the context that we see. What do I mean? Everything comes from Hashem. The righteous know that. And we've had Dvar Torah after Dvar Torah throughout the entire life of Yaakov so far. We've been able to show how he's a person of faith, deep faith. He knows that everything happens for a reason. So it seems very strange that he mourns his son in such a way, especially considering the very next verses talk about Yehuda and his, in his travails. He loses two sons that he marries off to Tamar, and right or wrong, whether he knew or not, it's not relevant. Certainly, he does not seem to mourn them the same way that Yaakov is mourning Yosef. What's the? I say, like I said, I was going to try to say this sensitively, but in a sense, what's the big deal? Aside from the obvious big deal of losing a child, why is it that Yaakov is so much out of character here because of Yosef's death? Supposed, alleged death.
Sorry, in comparison to what?
What was that?
In comparison to what? Like I always thought Yaakov kind of seemed like in character. I mean, he always loved Rachel and Yosef.
Yeah, but how does he mourn Rachel?
He puts her in the side road.
Yeah, there's not much talking about how he's going to mourn her forever. He loses Dinah. She's attacked in last week's parsha. What does he do? Do you see him mourning or crying or anything? No. He's always a man of faith. He knows that everything happens for a reason, and especially in comparison to the next verses, like I said, of Yehuda's losing two sons, and Yehuda barely responds. Why is Yaakov here so torn up? He's ready to die. He has other things going on. He does have 12 other children, right? 11 sons and a daughter, and yeah, it's what's really the big deal? Why is it that he's so out of, obviously, besides, of course, the fact that it's a losing of a child, what's unique about this that makes it so that Yaakov is seemingly out of character? This is not his character, that he sort of falls apart here. He hasn't fallen apart yet, and he's had lots of reasons to, right? So his mother dies, doesn't respond, right? His father dies, doesn't respond. Yeah, here, like this one son dies, and all of a sudden he's ready to die. So something's going on. It's unusual. So if we look at the Beit Halevi, right, of Yosef Dov Ber Soloveitchik, we get it, and we haven't actually, for some reason, I don't know, no really good reason, but we haven't seen any of the commentary from the Beit Halevi in a few years, as far as I can tell from my notes. It's weird. We had almost every week for the first few years of this class, and all of a sudden, sort of like disappeared. Maybe we said everything we needed to say, or so we thought. So he quotes with Midrash Eicha al pasuk Yashvu la'aretz. The verse in Eicha 2:14 that Shehevi v'Maseh Sanhedrin ve'atirul is kayaku al ma shehashviu Nebuchadnezzar v'Gazar Nebuchadnezzar l'horidan la'aretz miyad she'alu afar al Rasha. So Nebuchadnezzar said that the Sanhedrin he basically forced the Sanhedrin to sit on the ground. And what did they do? Hiskiru zchuto shel Avram she'amar anochi afar ve'efer, and they put afar on their heads, as we said, afar al rosham, and they said, we are like Avraham, that we have we're just a dust and ash. Chargu sakim etchilu l'hiskir zchuto shel Yaakov she'amar v'yasam sak b'menotav, and they put on the sackcloth just like Yaakov did, again, to show that they're as meritorious as Yaakov. Meritorious as Yaakov? The fact that he's mourning like this is good? So that seems to be the implication of this midrash. So what's going on? How could that be? So he quotes L'chora enu muvan v'chi lo matzu zchut acher b'Yaakov hiskiru rak had the Vayeishev sak b'matnav techel avor Yosef. Is that such a good thing that he put on sackcloth in this over, like this over, there's some people, I mean, we shouldn't judge. It's not my place to judge at all, but some people mourn too much, right? They live their whole. You read literature, you see this a lot. One example is Miss Havisham in Great Expectations. Those of you who've read Dickens, right? She lost her husband, her lover, whatever it was, and she would basically, she sat in mourning in the dark for the rest of her life, right? So she tried to like find ways to hurt other men in the future by adopting a girl and teaching her to be this terrible woman, right? This whole thing that you can live your life in mourning and in hatred of mankind for every single bad thing that's happened to you. But that's not Yaakov. And that's not supposed to be a good thing. So why is it that the Midrash sort of praises the Sanhedrin for putting on sackcloth in this mourning process? So They quote also the Midrash in Bereshit Rabbah. He quotes later on, says that even Yehuda coming up, his wife died and he was consoled. Here's the death of Yosef, and nothing is consoling Yaakov. So there has to be more to it. And the answer is, V'ayim b'midrash the mitruna achat she'ala al zeh the Yehuda kativ Yinachem zeh v'avihem shel kulam ktiv bo v'yimayin lehitnachem rak iker tzaro haya al shechaser lo minyan yud beit shvatim. What was he really sad about? What was the ikr? What was the main thing he was sad about? Was not the loss of Yosef. It was the loss of that special number 12. He was supposed to. He had prophecy, and so it seemingly from previous parsha, it seems that the foremothers as well, his wives, also had this prophecy that he would only have 12 sons, and now he has 11. He doesn't have that 12. He doesn't have the zodiac anymore. Right? These 12 sons, for whatever Kabbalistic reasons, are supposed to somehow match up with the spheres of the world, with the months of the year, all of that. And all of that's now gone because he only has 11. Yud bet Shvatim, the minyan zeh, hu ikar hayisod, ma'achliot umma the Israelite. The whole Jewish nation needs these 12 in order to survive. Zeh l'shon Midrash Parshat Vayetze says similarly in the Midrash in Parshat Vayetze, Natal Yaakov Yud Bet Avanim Amar Gazar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Ma'amid Yud Bet Shvatim Avraham Lo Hamidam Yitzchak Lo Hamidan Ani Im mitachot shnei masar avanim zuluzu yodea ani shani ma'amid shnayim asar shvatim. So Yaakov says there's a whole midrash, Bereshit Rabbah 68:11, where Yaakov took these 12 stones because he said that he was supposed to establish 12 tribes. So Yaakov said, Abraham didn't do this, Yitzchak didn't do this. This is on me. I have these 12 tribes. I need these 12 stones. And from that point on, V'zehu haya kol tishukato v'yigiato kol chayav livnot beit Yisrael avor zeh. Avad, but by Lavan Isrim Shana, and this is why he worked in Lavan's house for 20 years. All he kept thinking about was, I'm doing this. I've got this responsibility of these 12 tribes. It's all on me. V'chol hatzar shesabal me'esav, all the pain that he ever got from Esav, who rak avur sheyizke bebrachot Avraham v'eretz Yisrael v'karbanot v'hakol talui b'minyan hazeh. Everything hung, everything depended on these 12. That's number 12. V'achshav, and now, kishera mitztaref, shenitaref Yosef, v'haya sibur l'mechasar lo b'minyan, and now he has less than that. Now he's lost Yosef, now he only has 11. Harei nitkalkel kol mashi yigia kol chayav. He's lost everything he's been working for his entire life. His entire life, the Esav, the Lavan, the everything. All of it is all gone because he doesn't have that 12 anymore. If it's all about the 12, and now he only has 11, it's all gone. V'im kain shit avel alav kol hakavbet shanim. He's basically lost all those 22 years. V'im kain amar ki ared al b'ni aval she'ola. Now he can go and die because his whole life now has been pointless, is how he sees it. It's not fulfilled the prophecy. Now you might ask, and this is a beautiful point, beautiful chiddush of the Beit HaLevi. Beautiful. He says, Rak achti yiksha dema kol hatzar hazed, and he Amud kvar amdu miledet v'lo haya yeled od ben. So maybe he can get another son. He's not dead yet. He can have more children. Miko makam hayalo Lisa isha acheret. He can go marry another wife. Ve'afshar od yolid ben acher tachat Yosef v'itukan v'chol kivatchila. Not all is lost. You don't have to worry, Yaakov. Go get married again. Find another wife. Have a child. There you go. Your 11 becomes 12. No Yosef, but if 12 is a special number you're looking for, there's a way to do that. This is amazing. Amazing what this says about the power of a promise. Rak delo haya la'asot kain. He could not do this. Why? Mipnei hashvua shashviu lavan im tikach nashim al benotai kol zman shaya achat mehamahot kaemet lo haya yachol lisa isha acheret. He made a promise to Lava that he would not marry any other woman to be a tzara, to be a co-wife to Lavan's daughters. Lavan, the Russia, he made a promise to him that he wouldn't do it. But it's Yaakov making the promise. And Yaakov has to live up to his promises. So he's going to suffer now for 22 years, not because he can't have the number 12, but because he made a promise to Lavan. And by the way, we know, halachically, there's a way to get around these kinds of promises. You can go and be mevatel. You can go get your nedarim, your annulled. He doesn't want to do that. That's not a fair thing to do. And because this is a holy purpose, Yaakov can't foresee himself doing such a thing, to annul a vow that's going to create this chilul Hashem, and therefore he indeed says that I'm not gonna do this. And that, by the way, just to take it back to where the Beit Yosef started from, he said, what is it about the Sanhedrin that they wore sackcloth, that was a great merit for them? What were they saying? The Sanhedrin was saying that this is Jewish law. We are the Sanhedrin. We are the court. We're starting Masechet Sanhedrin tomorrow, right? We are the Jewish court, both the Mishnah Yomi and Daf Yomi, for the first time in history, all starting the same Masechet at the same time, right? Sanhedrin, right? So this is great. So we are the Sanhedrin, and it is our job to make a Kiddush Hashem in the world. It is our job to make it clear that there's a God in the world, and there's an order, and there's a purpose to everything that happens. And by putting on sackcloth, we're hearkening back to that merit of Yaakov. That Yaakov was able to push everything else aside, sacrifice his entire life, all the efforts and everything else that he's ever done, live in misery, not knowing how he's going to fulfill this prophecy of 12 sons without going back on his promise to Lavan. His promise to Lavan was that great, that it was worth for a Yaakov to suffer for all the rest of his life and die just to keep the promise. That's an amazing thing. That's the Beit Halevi on this parsha. A little bit about the Yehuda story. There's a lot to say, but we're getting short on time, and we have two more things I'd like to say today, I think. All right. So first of all, the Yehuda story is controversial, to say the least. There's a lot of intermarriage, a lot of death, a lot of things going on. Yehuda and prostitution, lots of questions that we could ask about the story. And in previous classes, we have some answers to some of those. Look at the description in the YouTube channel for any questions you want answered that might be in those videos. But one just from the very beginning, we have the fact that he marries somebody whose name were never given in the Torah. What do I mean? It says chapter 38, verse 2. Vayar Sham Yehuda bat ish Knani. Yehuda saw the daughter of a man, a Kanani, whether that means some Canaanite or whether that means a Kanani could also mean a merchant. Ushmo Shua, and his name was Shua, not to be confused with the common nickname for Yehoshua of Shua, not spelled the same way. Now this man's name was Shua, and Yehuda saw his daughter. V'ikachacha v'yavo aleha. He married her. What's her name? It never says. Interesting. Says there's Naim LaTorah. B'zaman Sorotzkin. Shema lo namar. It never says her name. Alan kora ota bat Shua ayin Shem avia. So it always calls her the daughter of Shua. Rak Shem aviha. Only her father's name, Shua, right? Uve Tamar namar rak Shema v'lo Shem aviha. Later on, we're going to be introduced to Yehuda's daughter-in-law and eventually wife or whatever, and her name is Tamar, and it never says her father's name. So here we have Yehuda's wife, who gives him 3 sons, and we don't know her name. We only know that her father. And later on, we have Yehuda's daughter-in-law. We know her name, Tamar, and we don't know her father. What's going on? The Torah is obviously pointing towards something. There's going to be some lesson to be learned from all this. You could just read any book you want, just like kind of skip the details. Oh, we know about this family. We don't know about that family. Okay, it doesn't matter. Here means something. The Torah wasn't just written to tell us stories. There's lessons to be learned. Ubetamar namar rak shema v'lo shem aviha, av shayta miyuchesed gedola. She has quite a bit of yichus, we find out. The Midrash tells us that Tamar wasn't just a nobody, but Shem ben Noach. She was the daughter of Shem, the daughter of the son of Noach. Shem, who started the yeshiva of Shem and Ever. Shem, who survived the Mabul in the Teva with Noach. So he's quite old at this time. So why is it that we know we know this from the Midrash? We don't know it from the text. The text doesn't say this. What is going on here? V'yesh lomar sha'al mihagioret bashua nitgera. It could be that because she converted, right, the daughter of Shua, in order to be Yehuda's wife, she converted somehow, right? Lizkor tamid et motzah. Hold on. We have this idea that when somebody converts, they're not supposed to be reminded in any kind of negative way, for sure, of their past. Not supposed to say, "Oh, your father, bowed down to Buddha," or your mother ran around the Kaaba, or I don't mean Kaaba like corn on the cob, whatever it is, the Kaaba, right? You're not supposed to embarrass a ger by asking them, "Oh, tell me about how you lit up your Christmas tree," or something like that. That's not something we're supposed to do. Once they are converted, they're supposed to be treated as equals. So v'tov lefanecha lizchut tamid shehi bat Shua. So to avoid that, because she converted, she's called bat Shua, right? So so even though it's important not to remind them, they need to remember that they come from something, right? That they should be proud of the fact that they grew and they became a holier people. So that's why it was always good for her to remember. She always had in mind that she is the daughter of Shua. Now so Shua is in the past, and Judaism, is in the future. The wife of Yehuda, the father of, the mother of the future progeny of Mashiach, David HaMelech, right? All of that comes from Yehuda. So there's something to be proud of. So but she always wanted to sort of humble herself to remember that where she came from, right? Jenny on the block kind of thing. Im Tamar Haita Zocheret Tami, but if Tamar always remembered where she came from, the daughter of Shem, the son of Noah, right? He Bat Malki Tzedek, she's a daughter of Malki Tzedek. That's another. Well, Rashi tells us that Malki Tzedek was a priest, right? The Rosh Yeshiva, Yadia Rafut, Lechit Atz Lamtzot, Rechush Lo Midot Ne'alut. So it's if she always remembered where she came from, then she would not try to improve herself, and therefore the Torah has to tell us shehi rak tamar and that helped to work on her inside and her development. Go from level to level to get higher and better, and not to always rely on the Yerusha, the more or less quote unquote, as he has quote unquote the inheritance that she received from her great father. That's an important lesson for all of us. Whatever it is that we need to keep in mind to help us grow, that's what we should keep in mind. And whatever keeps us down, whatever keeps us from growing, we should try our best to not think about it, not focus on it. Oh, I come from this, if my last name was Feinstein, I'd be the, I'd be so much better. That's not the way to think about things. Rav Moshe's children were great not because they were his children, but because they were great in and of themselves. They grew, right? Rav Reuven and Rav David, they became great Talmidei Chachamim in their own right. And so again, point here being that growth is supposed to be our focus, and that's the focus of the Torah. And even little tiny hints like that are worth picking up on and thinking about. Why is it that two characters, verses away from each other, one we know her father, one we don't know her father, one we don't know her name. Yeah, it's like that. All right. Just to conclude with the Yosef story before next week's parsha, where we'll have quite a bit more on the Yosef story. Yosef is sold as a slave into Egypt, and chapter 39, verse 2 tells us, "V'hi Hashem et Yosef." Hashem was with Yosef. V'hi ish matzliach, and he was a very successful man. V'hi beveit adunav mitzri, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. Okay. Writes the Ketav Sofer, the son of the Chatam Sofer, a Talmud Chacham in his own right. Yeah. So he writes. He wonders why the verse has to tell us Vahi ish matzliach, that he was a successful man. Part of the problem is, by the way, the verse could have said Vahi matzliach, he was successful. It didn't have to tell us he was a successful man. When the verse gives us an extra word like that, just like we had extra dots, an extra word here, an extra phrase, an extra name of a father here, all of these things are lessons in the Torah. All of these are lessons we're supposed to learn from. So the Ketav Sofer says, Amru Chazal in Gemara and Shabbat, Lamed Amud Bet 30b, Ein Hashchina Shora El Mitoch Simcha. To have the Shechina, to have prophecy, to be able to feel God's presence in this world, you need to have joy. If you don't, if you're depressed, you don't have joy. They actually say it on this week's Parsha because, amongst other places, Yaakov does, once he has that whole soliloquy, more or less, where he talks about how without Yosef, he might as well be dead. So over there, I believe the commentaries tell us that from that point on, Yaakov did not feel the Shekhinah, did not feel godliness, did not hear Hashem's voice until all the way later on in Vayigash, when he finds out that Yosef is actually still alive. So all of Parshat Miketz, all the way through, there's no communication between Hashem and Yaakov because there's no simcha, there's no joy. And we have to try to understand why not. Sheyichzav v'yimas v'mi shefanav zo efes v'libo b'karbo nishbar shemitrachek mimenu. Halo Hashem yishkon et decha shfal ruach. So, if somebody isn't feeling a sense of why is it that a person can feel sad? Now, forget about chemical depression here for a moment. But normal sadness, normal moroseness can only occur if you do not understand that things are happening for a good reason. That Hashem is in control and everything is going to happen that should happen. If you lack that confidence, so then you're going to lose the feeling of Hashem in the world. Those two reactions obviously feed each other. If you feel God's presence in the world, you know Hashem's in control and running the show, then you have nothing to be afraid of. You have nothing to be sad about, and everything good is gonna happen. Elahu hadavar asher dabarnu be. What's this? Mimakomos acherim, I think. Ki mishu b'shleimat emunam umnam ki hakol meHashem yitbarach. Somebody with emunah, somebody with faith, knows that everything comes from Hashem. Umi ito lo teitze haraot, and nothing bad can ever happen. V'lo yichav libo, his heart can't become angry. V'lo titbalel machshavato, and his mind can't become confused. Im yachal, even if he's sick. Oh, im yavo alav echad min ha-makarim lo tovim lefi shal rot ein adam. Nobody else's, anybody else's response to you doesn't affect you. Umi shedoe koev nanach mitztaer chisaron amuna b'tachonhu. And anytime you feel any kind of sadness, it's really saying something about your faith. Like, how much do you really believe and realize and recognize that everything is being run by Hashem? V'ish kazeh ein rai l'tishra alav shechina, and such a person should not feel the shechina. So what does this mean about Yosef then? Ki chisron shleimatu, he's not complete, he's not whole. Such a person who doesn't really recognize that Hashem is running the show, that person is lacking something that they need to work on. By the way, it's not the end of the game, by the way. It's not game over, it's not the end of the show, there's still more to come. In other words, you still have the ability, even if you lack that kind of faith, you always have the ability to get it back seconds later. So that's why v'yafa amru ein hashchina shora ela b'toch simcha. That's why it's correct that they say that Shechina can only rest on somebody with simcha, with joy. Mi shesamach libo b'tov b'Hashem Ki letav avid. So there's somebody who realizes that Hashem is doing everything, and everything Hashem does is good. Afal pisha enu roya ech uma. Even if he doesn't know, doesn't see how and what, you know that Hashem is running the show. You don't need to know everything that's happening. So what does this say about this Ish? This Ish. Why is the Torah calling Yosef an Ish? Because an Ish is complete. And Yosef is a man of Emunah. Over and over again, as we're going to find out, the Midrash in the beginning of next week's Parsha says, Baruch HaGever Asher Yiftach B'Hashem. That verse applies specifically to Yosef. Blessed is the man who has trust in Hashem. So that is Yosef. Yosef is the man of trust. And the fact that Hashem was with him and that he pulled him through these difficult times, especially considering how difficult his life was up to now. Yosef never lost that faith in Hashem all the way in the pit, right? In whatever kind of cell hostages were held by Midyanim and by Mitzrim. Doesn't matter. Yosef was able to sustain his faith through all of that. And that's what's allowed Yosef to still be matzliach and be successful and to be this person of emunah, this complete person who that felt Hashem's Shekhinah always with him, as we'll see throughout the rest of the story. And this is something that's not just for Yosef. Obviously, Yosef is a tzaddik, but it's true. There's a lesson to be learned by us. We can be that. It's within our ability. It's within our nature, as we see through many of the lessons that we pointed out in today's Parsha class. Whether it's the reason for the coat and the brothers being selfishly involved in their own business instead of being involved in a mitzvah, all of that idea, that whole concept of Shekhinah and mitzvah protecting us, is something that we're going to see throughout the Torah, and God willing, we'll see also throughout our lives. I'm going to stop the live feed to Facebook now, and if you have any questions, you can either ask now or comment in the video when it's on YouTube.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.